everyone, and welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel. We continue with Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. We're in chapter 47. This is 47b, and this one is called Slippery Slope. Hallelu et Adonai kol goyim, shabechu kol haomim, ki gavar alenu chasdo ve'emet Adonai le'olam, hallelujah. This class is dedicated to the refuah shlema of all those who are injured, of all the soldiers, of all the hostages. May they come home soon, and may we have unity, and for the swift coming of the full redemption in great mercy. Amen. Rabbi says, whenever our ancestors sat down, yeshiva, in the wilderness, they partook in idolatry. As said in Exodus 32:6, on the next day they arose early, offered up burnt offerings, and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and to drink, and they got up to make merry. וישכימו ממחרת והעלו עולות ויגשו שלמים וישב לשבת, that's to sit down, וישב העם לאכול ושתו ויקומו לצחק. לצחק comes from the word tzchok, laughter, litzchok, which is why Isaac's name is Yitzchak, because he was the son that was promised, and ultimately his descendants, us, along with God, will leave the last laugh. Will have the last laugh in the world. Who Yitzchak will laugh. Soon. Okay. As said in Psalms 4:2, he who dwells in heaven laughs. The Lord mocks them. Yoshev b'shamayim Yitzchak Adonai laglamo. He was the descendant that was promised to Abraham, through which the world would be blessed and also saved. The descendant whose birth went against the natural order of things. We've learned that both Avraham and Sarah, both of them were barren. And this first changed with Abraham in the coming into the pieces when he was 70, begetting Ishmael later on when he was 87 years old. But God told Abraham in Genesis 17, and God said, indeed your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you shall name him Isaac, Yitzchak, and I will establish my covenant. We're talking about the Brit. That's with Isaac, with him as an everlasting covenant for his seed after him. So not with Ishmael. That's coming to an end. But regarding Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and I will make him fruitful, and I will multiply him exceedingly. About 2 billion, right? He will beget 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. But, again, God says, my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at this time next year. End of story. But laughter, in this context, when one sits, as it says, this is called, in biblical Hebrew, moshav letzim. Let's see how this translates in Psalms 1:1. אשרי האיש אשר לא הלך בעצת רשעים ובדרך חטאים לא עמד ובמושב, מושב לשבת ובמושב לצים לא ישב. The praise of a man that are that he did not follow the counsel of the wicked, neither did he stand in the way of sinners, nor sit in the company of scorners. That's why it said, Rabbi says, whenever our ancestors sat down, yeshiva in the wilderness, they partook in idolatry. That's what this is alluding to. As said in Exodus 32:6, and the people sat down to eat and to drink. Okay, and then they woke up and to make merry. And what is written right after that, says Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, after God told Moses to descend from his place, Exodus 32:8, they have quickly turned away from the path that I have commanded them. They have made themselves a molten calf, and they have prostrated themselves before it, slaughtered sacrifices to it, and said, these are your God, or Ele Elohecha Israel, O Israel, who have brought you up from the land of Egypt. Now, before we go on with the text, which is going to give us another example of sitting as associated with idolatry, there's an instance that I can think of where sitting was the cause of trouble that would befall, but not necessarily idolatry. This is from Genesis 37:1. Now, again, I'm coming up with this thing, but we'll also see it later on, right? It's like, you make all these associations. Jacob dwelt in the land of his father's sojourning in the land of Canaan. You read this in the English, you don't get anything. Vayeshev Yaakov. Jacob sat, not dwelt. Jacob said, Lashevet Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz megurei aviv be'eretz Canaan. Vayeshev literally means sat, and why is this a bad thing? On its own, without context, this would not indicate anything bad. But when we read the chapter and we know what comes next, right, then we can now look at this entire verse differently. Once you read the whole thing, now you start going back like, oh, wait a minute. It's like watching a movie, and in the end, you get that twist. Then you watch that movie again, knowing what you know, you're like, yo, it was there the whole time, right? So this is how it works. So for instance, why does it say in the land of his father and not in the land of his forefathers, the way it usually does? Why specifically his father? Aviv, singular, as opposed to avotav, plural, referring to both Abraham and Isaac. The verse wants us to focus on Isaac, who represents judgment, signaling that trouble is a brewing, right? And why? Because Jacob sat. You see, there's a correlation between all of these, meaning he took a break when there was work to be done, no doubt. He just came out of Lavan. He just went through the instance with his brother Esav. He fought the angel beforehand, right? And they kept on traveling. Then he had to stop by Shechem, and we know what happened over there. Now, finally, he's in the land of his father, Isaac, the land of judgment. Judgment is going to ensue, and he took a break. Again, Jacob's role is not to take a break. Jacob's role is to toil, is to work. That's what happened. So it wasn't time to take a break yet, and that's why everything that had to happen happened afterwards, right? Meaning it took a break when there was work to be done. And so God, in his infinite wisdom, helped to move things along and began to give Joseph dreams. And the rest is history. You know what happened, right? So where else in the Torah do we see a direct correlation between sitting and idolatry? From the book of Numbers 25:1. Israel settled in Shittim. Hebrew says, Vayeshev Israel Bashittim, Vayachel ha'am liznot el bnot Moav. Israel sat in Shittim, and the people began to commit harlotry with the daughters of the Moabites. When we take a deeper dive into what exactly happened over there, we will see that the harlotry wasn't only sexual immorality. It never is. Believe it or not, that's actually a gateway. That's not the end-all be-all. In all the ancient pagan rituals, and I'm sure also current pagan rituals, it was always solidified with not only sexual immorality, but also various bodily fluids. This, just to let you know, it might get a little bit gross, okay? But this stuff is there. If you read the Mefarshim, the sages, they openly speak about this. These things need to be known, okay? So, and if you see these kind of signs today, you'll be like, oh, so idolatry never really died. It just kind of rebranded a little bit. Okay, so this goes back to the spilling of the seed from Genesis 6. And God saw the earth, and behold, it had become corrupted. Vayera Elohim et haaretz ve'ineh nishchata. It became corrupted. Why? Ki ishchit kol basar et darko al haaretz. For all flesh had corrupted its way on the earth. Quite literally spilling the seed on the earth. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth has become full of robbery, vatimaleh haaretz chamas mipneihem, because of them. And behold, I am destroying them from the earth. Vehineni mashchitam et haaretz. In other words, the earth already became corrupt because they corrupted the earth. That's why water's got to wash the earth away and everything on top of it. The physical ground became corrupted due to the spilling of the seed of all mankind upon the earth, and so the earth itself needed to be cleansed, scrubbed clean with the waters of the deep and the waters of the heavens. Later on, the Canaanites would throw their own children into the fire to be burnt alive at the feet of statues of Baal, all while they were having homosexual orgies over there. It's all the grossness that you could think of happens there. It's all part of that ritual. They still do it today, kids. The more impurity was infused into an act, the more dark forces would be allowed in, thereby giving its user powers. If you commit to the dark side, you will get these dark forces. You are foregoing your soul. Absolutely. This is not just like a Christian concept. Where do you think they get it from? This is happening. That's another reason why Balaam would get with his donkey. We all know this, right? Because he really needed to dwell in it in order to perform his magic. He had to go with the most abominable deeds possible. What else can he do to gird himself with more tum'ah, with more impurity? Okay, well, let's just throw bestiality into the mix. No problem. But what was the story with the daughters of Moab and Midian? This is from Masechet Sanhedrin 106a. And I apologize again for the gross details, but you need to know this. This was the advice that Bilam gave Balak to cause the children of Israel to fall. He said, make for them enclosures using wall hangings and seat prostitutes in them. In other words, like kind of open tents, right? Put prostitutes inside the tents with an old woman outside, and a young woman, the prostitute, would be inside, and have the women sell them linen garments. Balak made for them enclosures using wall hangings from the snow mountains, the Hermon, right, until Beit Hayeshimot, and he sat prostitutes in them, with an old woman outside and a young woman inside. And at the time when Israel were eating and drinking, and were glad and going out to stroll in the marketplace, the old woman would say to them, aren't you seeking linen garments? He would enter the enclosure and ask the price. The old woman would quote him a price equal to its value, and the young woman would then open the thing and say, hey, she'd quote him a price less than its value. That scenario would repeat itself 2 or 3 times. And thereafter she would say to him, you are like a member of our household. Sit and choose for yourself the merchandise that you want. Why members of the household? Because Ammon, Moab, right? The Moabites are the kids of Lot. Lot and Abraham, Abraham was Lot's uncle. So in essence, yeah, we're like family, only not really. All right. You're like members of our household. Sit and choose for yourself the merchandise that you want. A jug of Ammonite wine was placed near her, and neither Ammonite wine nor Gentile wine had been prohibited yet for Israel. She said to him, it is your wish to drink a cup of wine? Once he drank the wine, his evil inclination burned within him. In other words, it's called when the body gets hot, that's where you arouse their sexual desire. He then said to her, submit to me. In other words, okay, we're doing this right now. She then removed the idol that she worshipped from her lap and said to him, worship this. Like, okay, you want a piece of this? You want all of this? Worship this. He said to her, am I not a Jew? Meaning, am I not Israel? I don't do idolatry, right? She said to him, and what is your concern? We are asking you to do nothing more, and again, this is in Sanhedrin, than to defecate in its presence. In the presence of this idol. But he does not know that that itself is the worship of this specific idolatry. Once he did so, she said to him, moreover, I will not leave you until you deny, in other words, after all of this stuff, right? I will not leave you until you deny the Torah of Moses, your teacher. As it stated, but when they came to Baal Peor, they separated themselves to the shameful item, and they became detestable like that which they loved. This is from Hosea 9:10, speaking of that event, right? That we see in the end of Parashat Balak, beginning of Pinchas. They devoted themselves to the disgrace of defecation and detested the name of God. So yes, you heard correctly. The way to worship Baal Peor, or Peor means, gaping. Now you understand. It's right there in the name. To do so in the way that would either be foreign or so obscure that it would not even have crossed their minds. They're like, wait a minute, the way we worship God, we fall on our faces, we purify ourselves, we go through all these things. You want me to go number 2 in front of this thing over here? Obviously, no, I wouldn't consider that would be worshiping it, right? It's like, what are you wanting? Go number 2. Go, right? That's it. So it wouldn't cross their mind that this is a ritual within itself. And all this came through sexual immorality, which is already a sin unto itself, but not like idolatry. But again, one thing leads to the next. Now, think about this for a moment. What else does the whole world engage in today that is called in the Bible detestable before God? Leviticus 25. If your brother becomes destitute and his hand falters beside you, you shall support him, whether a convert or a resident, so that he can live with you. You shall not take from him interest or increase, and you shall fear your God and let your brother live with you. You shall not give him your money with interest, nor shall you give your food with increase. And this is to the ger toshav, meaning to the Gentile who lives within your borders. How much more so should you never do this to your fellow Jew? So long as the banking system stands in the world today, we are all liable because its practices cause us to go against what is written in the Torah. We'll be discussing this in the Calling All Jews as well. But to a Gentile who does not dwell among you, you are allowed to. As said in Deuteronomy 23, you shall not give interest to your brother, whether it be interest or money, interest on food, or interest on any other item for which interest is normally taken, meaning normally in the world. You may, however, give interest to a Gentile, but to your brother you shall not give interest, in order that the Lord your God shall bless you in every one of your endeavors on the land to which you are coming to possess. Israel. When you make a vow to the Lord your God, you shall not delay paying it, for the Lord your God will demand it from you, and it will be counted to you as a sin. Detestable is detestable, and that is just one way that the world today, one way in the world today that is significantly weakening Israel. And most people are not aware of this at all. So again, everything has got to fall. Now, can you imagine what else is hiding out there in plain sight? So the banking system is something that is detestable. That being passed off today as standard practices that actually falls under the guise of idolatry. You don't even know what goes on. So, to continue reading this section in Sanhedrin, it bolsters the point we read in our text, not from the aspect of idolatry, but from the aspect of pain and sorrow. As it says, Rabbi Yochanan says, everywhere that it is stated, and he dwelt, meaning yashav, right? It is nothing other than an expression of pain, of an impending calamity. As it's stated, and Israel dwelt in Shittim, and the people began to commit harlotry with the daughters of Moab, what we read in Numbers 25:1. It is stated, and Jacob dwelt in the land where his father had sojourned in the land of Canaan, like we discussed from Genesis 37:1. And it's stated afterwards, and Joseph brought evil report of his report of them, meaning his brothers, to his father, Genesis 37:2, which led to the sale of Joseph. Everything is connected over here. As it is stated, and Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen, Genesis 47:27. And it is stated thereafter, and the time drew near that Israel was to die, Genesis 47:29. All these things, whenever you see yeshiva, trouble, pain, sorrow, idolatry, nothing good comes from that. It is stated, and Judah and Israel dwelt safely, every man under his vine and under his fig tree, in 1 Kings 5:5. And it is stated thereafter, and the Lord raised up an adversary to Solomon, Hadad the Edomite. He was the king's seed of Edom, 1 Kings 11:14. Oy vavoy. In other words, if you're sitting down and you're not constantly on guard, trouble will ensue. So you see, everything means something, and also it could also mean more than one thing. And when you see these connections, which our sages wisely connect the dots for us, right? You could see it here, you could see it there, but putting it all together, I think that's what everything is all about, because all the information is out there, but you really need somebody to make those connections for you. That's where the sages come in, right? And that's why it's great. If you read all the different sages and what this one says and what that one says, they don't all necessarily say the same thing. And as the later generations start to roll around, you see they actually cover and add to what the previous generation said before. You got an incredible picture from that. So due to this, we can gain a much better understanding of Torah. So let's continue with our text. Rabbi Yehuda says regarding the verse in Job 21:16, behold, is it not there prosperity in their land? Is not there prosperity in their hand? The counsel of the wicked has distanced itself from me. Hen lo beyadam tuvam atzat reshaim rachkam meni. As by the counsel of Bilam, which he gave to Midian, 24,000 of Israel fell, due to his counsel, the counsel of the wicked. The Radal says that the Ramban Nachmanides said that when Bilam returned to his land, he crossed through Midian and was sitting with the advisors and with the counselors. And so he gave them counsel. How shall we say, send their daughters into the streets. Do that. And they're like, oh, sure. Okay, no problem. This coincides with the verse, the counsel of the wicked has distanced itself from me. Everybody was affected by this counsel. 24,000 men of the tribe of Shimon were killed in the plague. Balaam was later killed, and the Midianites were all but wiped off the face of the earth. So what did Balaam say to them? He told them, you cannot overpower this nation unless they sin before their creator. Israel, do you hear that? En alenu, no one can touch us if we do not sin. Nothing, doesn't matter what comes. This is so basic, it's so plain and simple. This could not be any more straightforward than what was said. All the missiles, the rockets, the bombs, the plagues, the curses, everything that naturally was designed to destroy will not be able to touch Israel, not even come near Israel, if we follow the Torah. Not only that, we won't even be aware of these forces trying to kill us because there's no need for us to worry. Read Parshat Balak. Where is Israel mentioned in all of this? Nothing. We're just seeing the adversaries of Israel trying to hit him from here, trying to hit him from there, trying to hit him from there. Nothing. And who wrote Parashat Balak? It was Moses. It says that Moses wrote actually 2 Parashat, including the book of Bereshit, because how else would he know about it? He got it from God. But he wasn't mentioned over there, right? It was all what was going on around Israel. Israel were not even aware they were doing their thing. Everything was fine. Don't worry about it. Let the world eat itself. But we are fine so long as we follow God and his Torah. So the moment the Midianites heard this, how to hurt Israel, then our text says, they immediately did as Bilam said, as they set up shop around the camps of Israel and would see the daughters of Midian painting their eyes like prostitutes, and they went astray after them. As said in Numbers 25:1, Israel sat in Shittim, and the people began to commit harlotry with the daughters of the Moabites. Our commentator, Velo Od Ela, asked the question, out of all the ways to entrap Israel, why did he advise on Baal Peor as the specific idol of worship? Out of all the other idols, why that one to worship, along with how you worship it? The short answer is because we knew very well that Israel would stay away from anything that had to do with impurity and constantly guarded themselves. So when they would see the man-made statue of Baal Peor on their own, they would defecate on it as a sign of disrespect for idolatry, proving their loyalty to God. I mean, it's a weird thing to do, but it's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go defecate on that. It's a sign of disrespect, obviously. I mean, nobody should do this regardless, but you see what I'm saying? But what they didn't know, and what would never have occurred to them, is that those despicable acts are how you worship this particular idol. So to go something that is so far-fetched, something that you would not even consider, that is what is being done in the world today. That's why there's idolatry almost everywhere. And it all comes from the 5 books of Moses. You could see what this is and all the practices of the ways of the world today that people are just not aware of. And guess what? We are all guilty. They made it so you cannot live in the world today and not partake in this. Everybody is guilty. That's why a cleanse really has to take place. All right. Okay, so they wouldn't have done this on their own if they hadn't entered into the tent to begin with the old woman and the prostitute. And when that happens, the Shekhinah is out of there so fast as there can be no holiness in a place of filth. That's why also when you go into the bathroom, you're not allowed to even think of anything holy, of anything Torah. Nothing. Start singing a different song in your head, because These powers actually, again, what do you think this is? In the ancient world, they used to bury those idols beneath outhouses as a form of worship. In other words, whenever you went to do your business, you would worship idolatry as a result. They knew exactly what they're doing. They know our laws. They know how to make us break their laws even without us being aware of it. Okay, so like we said, when this happens, the Shekhinah is gone from the person immediately. Now, when that happens, the Shekhinah is gone, there's like a spiritual void. And then the impurity takes over. And how does that end? What did we read earlier about the outcome from what it said in Sanhedrin, as quoted from Hosea 9:10? Like grapes in the desert, I found Israel, like a ripe fig on a fig tree. In its beginning, I saw your forefathers. They came to Baal Peor, and they separated themselves to a shameful thing, and they became detestable when they loved. Ka'ahavam, in other words, according to what it is that they loved. Because you allowed this in, not only will you be despised by that which you loved, but you will also despise that which you loved. In other words, the Shekhinah is going to despise you because unholiness, but because you did this and now the unholiness dwells with you, you by default despise that which is holy. It actually changes you because you know, or at least your soul knows, that what you are doing is wrong. But because it has its hooks in you already, the shame is too much to bear, so you project and you lash out. This is what we call the klipot, or in modern day you could call it, you'll call it your armor. You've been so jaded. We take levels and layers of things upon us, and we think that this is who we are, but this is actually really not who we are. You're defending something which in your soul you know is wrong, but because you're already committed to it, your psychology, your psyche is saying, wait a minute, if I admit that I'm wrong, that means I'm wrong. And there's your ego saying, no, I'm not wrong. Now, it depends how far you go. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. I mean, I know what I'm going to say. I'm just thinking if I'm going to say it. And yeah, why not? Let's say it. Okay, so all those, for instance, that took the magic cure, right? The magic cure that definitely is magic and the cure, right? Okay, so in any case, those that took the magic cure gave it to their children, forced it on their children, and people are dropping dead like flies all over the place. If I came to a person and say, so, you know you killed your kids, right? They would obviously, it wouldn't sit well with them, nor would I ever say anything like that, right? Because I don't want to boast about anything like that. But they will reject that idea until the very end, because then they have to come to the realization, into the reality that, wait a minute, I was the one that put poison into my children. You see what I'm saying? It goes like that. So this, in the case of idolatry, in the case of whatever, we will all defend our position because no one wants to be wrong. We would rather be dead than be wrong. And in many cases, unfortunately, it looks like that's what's happening. So let's continue. All this starts through sexual immorality. How many Jews have we lost in the world over the ages and today to assimilation? I've heard this all the years that I've been in the States. Jews end up with non-Jews which is a transgression from the Torah, right? You stay within your people. There's a reason for this. And the same line comes up again and again. Well, you can't help or you can't control who you fall in love with, but you can control your environment. That would be in our case, don't go venturing outside the camp. That's where trouble abounds. Stay within the camp. You have everything you need right here. And if you do, then don't go into the tent with a naked woman for a better price. I mean, I know we're world-renowned hagglers. We're Jews, right? What Jew never, doesn't always look for a better deal? But at what cost? They knew our personality even back then. And once they got you, they got you. You will give up your family, your friends, your beliefs, your faith, your moral compass is no longer reliable, and everything you do from that point forward should absolutely be questioned. You see, it's from one thing, and this primarily starts from sexual immorality, and you just give up everything. And there will be no way for you to see this until you cut that relationship, until you do tshuva and return from whence you came. This is how they got us back then, and this is also how they get us today. It says in Sanhedrin 63b, Rav Yehuda says that Rav says Israel knew that idol worship is of no substance. In other words, they didn't even believe what it is that they did. Like, okay, I'm going number 2 on this thing. I'm bowing to that thing, kissing that. I know these are man-made things. What is Maya Selecha? How is this going to add to you, right? And they worshipped idols only. Why did they do it back then? Only in order to permit themselves to engage in forbidden sexual relations in public, since most rituals of idol worship would include public displays of forbidden sexual intercourse. Like we said, as it was, and so it is today. As we discussed. So, Bilam, Imach Shemo, saw this happen with the golden calf. And so he figured out a way to get Israel, thereby first representing sexual immorality, hooking them, which was conditional upon idol worship, as one will ultimately lead to the other. And that's how it goes. So in other words, fine, you don't believe in that, but still, she's a hot chick. Why not? Yeah, she's my girlfriend now. How many stories have we heard? But that's how it is. All the beautiful girls come out. So it was, and so it is. And we can break at any point in time, so long as we choose to be aware of it all. In other words, we can end this, but we have to take responsibility. And again, since things are moving along right now, if you're hearing this, make that choice. If you have any questions, send me an email. And that's our class today, short and sweet. So thank you as always for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of the week and have a Shabbat Shalom.